Hello Gobs, and welcome back to another episode of Gob Rant. And haven't done one of these in a while. I feel like I say that every time I do Gob Rants because there's always such a long in between. But for those of you who don't know what Gob Rants is and just clicked on the title, this is my series where I pick a topic, either RPG related, that's what they are for now, and eventually it will branch out into other topics. I mean, I've done some non-RPG related stuff, I would like to think. All of it's kind of RPG correlated. But I pick a topic and then I make myself angry about it, and then I just sit here and rant to you guys about it. Talk about what it is, give my side of it. You know how it is. I'm ranting. That's all I'm doing. I'm ranting over some random gameplay. So, before we actually get into the rant, I would like to say I'm the Goblin King, okay? I make RPG content. Click my name, you'll see all the type of content I make. And this isn't to incite, like, rage bait. This isn't like a rage bait series. This is like I want discussions in the comments, and I might eventually do a follow-up video if that video gets enough comments to do another follow-up video on where I read and respond to them, not bashing the original person or anything. Even if you call me big mean words, like you green pickle, I guess, I don't know. But, you know, I'm not going to bash you for it. You can type whatever you want, okay? So, this is just to simply invoke discussions within the comments to get other people to talk to each other. You can call it comment engagement, you can call it whatever you want, but that's truly what I want to do. I just want to see what other people have to say, because we all come from different walks of life. So, for today's Gob Rant, so we can get the title card in here, I guess the overall rant will be Homebrew Rules. That's what it's going to be overall, but let me break it down just a little bit. Now, this could be a very big topic, but I'm going to keep it light, and I'm only going to focus on either one or two homebrew rules that I've seen floating around, and I will tell you if I have a problem with them or not, okay? I don't have anything written down. I'm literally just sitting here in front of my screen talking to you, the microphone. But anyways, this is Homebrew Rules. And a lot of these are going to be pointed at D&D just because that's the only thing I see for Homebrew Rules is D&D. Now, you know, I might see some magic stuff, but I'm talking about TTRPGs, and D&D is about the biggest one. And like I said, I don't ever see anything for Homebrew Rules for like Pathfinder, or like Call of Cthulhu, Fabula Ultima, Ryutama. I don't see Homebrew Rules for that vie from the original content. I only specifically see it for D&D. And you know, since I'm talking about this, how about you guys write down some of your homebrew rules that you have in the comments below, okay? You can write a comment for homebrew rules that you guys prefer, and then you can write, I don't know, it's a comment responding to the rant overall. I mean, I'm not really ranting, I'm really just discussing this issue, but let's just get into what a homebrew rule is, and that should be very obvious, but for those of you who don't know, a homebrew rule is anything that isn't in the original rules. For example, and also one of the first topics I'm going to be talking about, using a potion as a bonus action. Now, this was a big thing in 5e, but I'm pretty sure they changed it in D&D 1 or 1 D&D? Advanced D? Not advanced. It's 1 D&D now, or D&D 2024, I think. It's whatever. It's the latest version of D&D. I'm pretty sure they changed it that you can drink potions on a bonus action, and well, you get the idea. That it was originally not part of the rules. You had to use a potion as a full interact action, meaning you take up your entire turn drinking one potion. So a lot of times people would adopt this homebrew rule where people are allowed to use potions as a bonus action. And more specifically, I think this rule got even more popular when Baldur's Gate 3 came around, since Baldur's Gate 3 is based on D&D 5e, and in that game you can use potions as a bonus action, any potion as a bonus action, and it works well because it's a single player game, but that might be giving in to what I think about it. Not really. Actually, you know what? I used to care about it. I used to be a big, I don't know what the word is, a big gob on very against potions as a bonus action. I used to be vehement about it, but now I just don't care. It's like, if that's what works for your table, go ahead and use it. Since I'm not that big on it anymore, there used to be something I used to be like, no, just follow the rules. But nowadays, just do what's cool for your group. That's what the entire conclusion of this video is going to be anyways. Just do whatever's cool for your group. If you want to use potions as a bonus action, go ahead. If you don't want to use it, go ahead. As long as you tell your group beforehand and everyone comes to an agreement, then you can use whatever homebrew or not use whatever homebrew rule that you want. Now, there are tons of others that I could think of, but when we talk about homebrew rules, there's usually 3 options. It's either no, you can't use it, yes, you can use it, or yes, but. So we're going to use potions as a bonus action rule. So there's no, you can't use a potion as a bonus action because that's not what the rules say. Then there's yes, you can use it because I don't care what the rules say. And then there's this hybrid where it's like yes, but there's a compromise. So usually the hybrid rule, this is the most popular one I've seen, and I think a lot of people use this, but it's if you use a healing potion as a bonus action, then you have to roll for the healing. But if you use it as a full action, then you get the entire whatever 2d10, or I forget how much a potion heals you for, but you get the entire to your health. That's a hybrid rule, which is still a homebrew rule. So I guess if you're that much against homebrew rules, then you don't have to use anything. For me, I'm kind of just in the middle. I would like to heal the rule first and then play it. Like, for example, in the DMG, they actually have some other homebrew rules within the DMG. One of them being flanking. Flanking essentially is if a character, whether it be an enemy or allies, is surrounded by 2 enemies on opposite sides of it, then the person at the back is considered flanking, and usually they get a +2 to their attack roll against whatever they're flanking. Now, we tried this rule for a little bit. So what usually ended up happening on the battle board was you would have your first ally who was engaged with an enemy. Then you would have the next ally flanking the enemy. But then you would get an enemy flanking the ally. And then you would get the last ally, or however many players you have in your party, flanking that enemy. And then if you have any more enemies left over, that enemy would flank that ally. And the flanking rule is a bit flawed. Now, obviously, the battle board's going to change a lot. They're not usually, I mean, it depends on how wide and how long and the obstacles. So it might not always end up like that, but if you have a lot of marshals or it's the beginning of the game where you don't have a lot of spells, then you tend to see a conga line of just flanking when it comes to the flanking homebrew rule. Or is it technically homebrew if it's in the DMG? I mean, it's an optional rule written by the wizards and an official supplement written for that system. So is it really a homebrew rule? I guess it's optional rules can be thrown in here too. But yeah, I don't really like the flanking rule, or at least when it comes to that. It rewards your players for positioning well, but it could also get battles over quickly in 5e, which definitely need a speed up, but not really. I mean, that's just all. Everything is just dependent on how you run battles. But for the most part, D&D battles can take a while, and the flanking system just might speed it up or it might break it. Honestly, I have no idea. Again, whenever you use a homebrew rule, going off it might make or break it, remember, anytime you put in a homebrew rule, you can always just take it out, as long as you let your players know either before or after. Don't do it during the session, because then it's just feel bad, or unless it's like that vehemently broken that you need to do it mid-session. But if you can, try to keep it till the end of the session or the start of the session. Now, a couple other rules. Actually, a homebrew rule that I used, aside from the potion one, was that bows were versatile, as in you could use your strength modifier if you fired a bow. And where did I get this rule? I think I just saw it online randomly, because bows were like, oh, bows actually use strength over dexterity. But there's a reason that dexterity is applied to ranged weapons, at least in D&D. At least, the game designers designed it that way, and they didn't give you a way to use the bows. But the game designers don't always know what's best. And again, you can use whatever rule you want. I simply use this one because I agreed with it. Like, yeah, bows can definitely use strength, and I want my martial characters to actually have some type of ranged backup that isn't just chucking a spear at somebody, although that is pretty cool. but that was way long ago, and then I eventually got into Pathfinder 2e, and I think there's that exact rule in Pathfinder 2e, although you don't get bonus damage in Pathfinder unless you take very specific things on range weapons. At least bows in there, I think they were called composite. I think even 3.5 had bows that use strength. I'm pretty certain. Don't quote me on it, but I'm like 80% sure that bows in 3.5 could also use their strength. Now, any other homebrew rules that I can think of? I didn't like, again, I'm usually by the book. I'm not a rules lawyer. I've called myself rules lawyers in the past, but I've come to learn sort of what that term is, and it's not really a negative thing, because sometimes you want somebody who knows the rules a lot, but if that person's constantly interrupting, like, that rule doesn't say you can do that, the rule doesn't say you can do that, and they're just constantly interrupting the flow of the session, then yeah, because they're lawyering for the rules more than what the GM wants to do. Now, sometimes the GM's just doing some wacky stuff, and you're like, the rules don't work like that, and sometimes it can even be, like, what's the word? One-sided. Like the GM's using a rule, but the other players have to use a rule by the book, and the GM's using this other rule that's not by the book for essentially the same action. Has that ever happened? I'm sure it has. But what I'm basically trying to say, that rules lawyers aren't always bad, okay? And having someone that knows the rules isn't a bad thing, as long as they know when to rules a lawyer and when not to rules a lawyer. If it's flowing, the session's going, don't interrupt at all. But if someone's being beaten down for a rule that the GM thinks in the book and you know it's not in the book, then go ahead and start rules lawyering, okay? Stick up for your players. But at the end of the day, when it comes to homebrew, you guys know what works for your group, okay? Again, like I said, you can always put in a homebrew rule and you can always take it out, and I have no idea what I'm sounding like anymore. I probably sound like a broken record. So, let's just get to the end of this. It's a very short Gob Rant. I don't have a strong opinion on homebrew rules anymore, personally, because if I don't like a homebrew rule, I'm going to speak up about it. One time, one of my friends who was running a DM, great friend, kind of an okay DM, okay, they were getting better towards the end of their DMing. I mean, they're still going to DM and they're still going to improve as long as, you keep being vocal about it, you keep giving them feedback, people tend to improve. Be nice about it, don't be jerks, okay, you're friends after all. But anyways, one time he had triple disadvantage on an invisible character, although my character saw him turn invisible. Yeah, that's rolling 3d20 and picking the lowest. Like, at that point, why even attack? But I still did it, okay? I was a barbarian, so I had some ways to get advantage on my attack. So, I was only rolling at disadvantage. Ooh. Which, that's the normal rule. For rolling to hit a invisible character that you know, I'm pretty sure it's just disadvantage, or some type of way that the attack would always miss. I don't know. I've been reading Lancer in that book. If you try to hit an invisible character, there's a 50% chance the attack will miss. But regardless, that was just one of the homebrew rules. Of course, there's been a ton that he's put in there, but I told him about them all, so don't worry, okay? So if there's a homebrew rule that you're running or your group is running and you don't really like it, make sure you speak up about it, and vice versa. If there's a homebrew rule that you want to put into the group or introduce to the group, then make sure you talk to your players or talk to your friends or whoever you're playing with. Make sure you talk to them about it and make sure it's okay before you use it. That's it. Did I make sense? Probably not. That's probably what happens with a lot of these Gob Rants. I know editing Gob's just having a field day with this audio, because it really is just going to be all over the place. Like I said, I just sit down and record these, but what are you guys' thoughts? Do you like homebrew rules? Do you hate homebrew rules? Tell me some of your homebrew rules in the description. Make sure you take a shot every time I've said homebrew rules throughout this video. Don't do that. Don't do that. No, don't ever do that. But if you like this type of content and you want to see more, let me know. Like it, comment it. Of course, if you want to see more, you can always subscribe and click my name to see other type of content. Because not only do I rant about RPG or read RPG stories, I may also play them and review them on my channel. Okay? I got a great Final Fantasy series going on. It makes great background noise. How about you go check that out? Lastly, thank you for watching if you made it this far, and I hope you gobs have a lop of a day. May your rules be fun.